We're going to call this meeting to order.
Mics, please.
I'm so sorry. This is Thursday, July the 28th. This is a first budget workshop for the city of Williston. It is 5:30 p.m. And Ms. Wright, I'll ask you to call roll, please.
Mayor Goodman,
I am here.
President Jones,
Here.
Vice President Robinson,
Here.
Councilmember Bullock,
Here.
Councilmember Cox,
Here.
Councilmember Ross,
Here.
City Manager Jackie Gorman,
Here.
Deputy City Manager Dina Nelson,
Here.
Finance Director Stephen Bloom, he's online, City Clerk Latricia Wright here, and all other staff.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we will stand for the opening prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance by Mayor Goodman.
Lord, I'd like to take this time to thank you for the grace that you give this city and this country. And Lord, for the protection that you give us when all the world seems like there's no place that is safe. And Lord, I ask you now to be with our police officers, Lord, as they go out every day not knowing what new incident they're going to have. And our fire department, Lord. And Lord, I ask you to be with the people in the service, our soldiers, our men and women who are serving this country to try to keep us safe. And Lord, I would like to ask you to be with each one of these people who are sacrificing their time and living in a way that they can help our city to the best of their ability. I ask all this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Mayor Goodman. Okay, at this time, we will go to item number 2, which is the presentation by our Finance Director, Mr. Stephen Bloom. Mr. Bloom, on behalf of the City Council and the staff, we would like to tell you that we are so sorry to hear about your father. Our prayers are with you.
All right, you're on, Steve.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, you're on.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Madam President, thank you and council so much for that. I wish I could be there and wish it was a better time, but thanks again for letting me call in for a minute or two.
Yes, sir, we understand completely. You have the floor.
Okay, thanks. So, take a couple minutes and make sure I set the stage for your workshop tonight. Tonight is obviously the first of many steps that you will go through, and obviously will not be, the last time that you will have an opportunity to discuss or go through different parts of the budget. But with that in mind, there are a couple of key steps that you want to accomplish tonight in order to get through the first part of the trim process. And what that means is you have to be able to, by August 4th, establish the maximum millage rate that you want for next year. You can always lower that rate, and we've talked about this in prior years, but you cannot go above that once you set that, and you'll be doing that on your meeting on Tuesday. So that's why it is critical that you have some discussions tonight on where you want that millage rate. And again, it's worth repeating, once you establish it, you cannot go higher. And the millage rate will be sent out on the trim notices that get sent out to everyone and it also will publish your first budget hearing date. And again, there will be 2 budget hearings. Both of them will be in September, and both of them will be after 5 o'clock. They have to be. And up between now and then, you obviously will have the opportunity to have as many workshops and other discussions. So with that being said, what you have done tonight is all the opening acts of both process down budget.
Linda, get closer to the mic.
We're having a hard time hearing you, Stephen.
Is this better?
Yes.
Perfect.
Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. So what I was saying is you have, on one hand, you have a balanced budget that was provided to you for each fund. Every fund is balanced. And then on the other hand, you have some staffing requests that you will need to kind of go through and determine if you want to be added to the budget that you have, or changes to the budget that you have. So that obviously will be the next steps here from the department managers that will have worked very hard to provide input both on the budget you have in front of you, but also on these additional staffing requests, and have even already started to provide other ways of making cuts and doing things, and have been very involved in this process, and I certainly will be eager to kind of share that with you tonight. But that's kind of what you have in front of you. In terms of the budget itself, I did want to, and obviously you have some slides there that goes through a lot of this stuff, but there's a couple of key things that I just wanted to mention up front here. The first is you really do not have in what's in your budget a lot of new positions. There are a couple in there in terms of part-time, but unlike last year where there were some significant positions that had to be added for regulatory issues, you do not have that in the budget you have in front of you. Instead, you have the second step, which is staffing requests to try to increase compensation for the different positions, something we did talk about last year, but only was able to do some of them. The other thing I wanted to mention is in terms of your utility fund, the budget you have does include the recommended rate changes that were provided by your consultants for both electric and gas. Should the council decide that that is not something that they want to do in terms of rate increases, that would obviously change the budget. So that's something I wanted to mention. The budget is built on your current millage rate, 6.75. That's what's in the package you have that was in the binders. That's 6.75. I've also provided some slides that will show you, other different millage rate options, should that be something the council wishes to discuss. There is significant equipment. There is other capital projects that's included in the budget, and then in the supplemental package, staff has worked very hard to work on a 5-year capital improvement program. That's something that we haven't had in a little while, but you can see for each of the significant utilities, and it's kind of important to be looking down the line there. For each of those significant utilities, you have all of the projects that were recommended by staff as well as your consultant. The last thing I'll mention, or actually 2 more things I would want to mention. One is in order to balance the budget, the primary budget, what I'll call it, that you have, I did have to increase the transfer from the utility fund by $25,000. So it's now $925,000 that's in there. Also, similar to prior years, there is capital that would require cash reserves. There's one capital equipment that would be required within the next 18 to 24 months that would require a loan. And then, as the staff has always worked really hard on, there are grants, a significant amount of grants that they'll be able to kind of walk you through that will also help fund some of these projects.
One more.
And then I guess I do want one last thing, because this one is kind of an interesting one for this year's budget compared to any budget that I think I've done for the city. Both the general pension plan as well as the police pension plan have reductions in the city's contribution. What happens every year for both of these pension plans is an outside actuarial actually goes through each pension plan and comes up with a number that the city should contribute in the next year. And it's, a lot of years it's a little bit of an increase, maybe a small decrease. This year, the general employee pension rate is actually 0 for next year. That means that the pension plan itself has done so well and has been so funded that there is no contribution required. That's a 1 year, number, meaning that you obviously cannot count on that, in subsequent years. As a point of reference, in your current year, the contribution rate is 1.94. So it's not a huge decrease, but it is a decrease. The larger decrease is actually on the police side. The current year contribution recommendation is 19.76%. The actuarial report that we just got, several months ago actually, is showing a recommended contribution rate of 1.70. So a really, big difference down, and that is already built in the budget that you have. And with that, that's very top level. And I did want to just kind of set the stage, and again, happy, to answer any quick questions for you. And again, apologize that I kind of can't be there for tonight.
I completely understand. I don't know that we have any questions at this level, but I know we will have many. I think what we're going to try to do, I haven't talked with the council about it yet, but I think we're going to just try to do part of the meeting tonight instead of all of it, because I know when we do it without you, somebody has to take meticulous notes to tell you what to do in order to revise the budget. So I think we're going to do... Yeah. So I think we're going to try to accomplish what we have to accomplish tonight, and we're going to try to set another meeting in maybe about 2 weeks before our next scheduled meeting.
That's fine. I also will be, once the meeting's done, and in the next couple of days, I will listen to it. So okay. I will certainly be able to make any notes to be able to address some of those things.
Okay, I think Ms. Latricia has something to say.
Stephen, I heard you say it's something about the millage rate. Are we setting that tonight?
We are.
To be on the next meeting?
To be on the, yeah.
Okay, because I need to...
Okay,
I need to revise the agenda to reflect that for August the 2nd.
Oh, yes. Well, yeah, that's I have to. Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Stephen at this time? I think we're on our own for tonight. And we'll try to record our questions for you and any changes that we make so that they can be done in the next couple of weeks. And let's try to set another meeting to try to finish up what we don't get through tonight. And we appreciate you calling in at such a time.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll
have a good
let
night.
You go. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, did everybody hear me say that? We need to agree to that. As I came in here today, I knew that Stephen wouldn't be here because his father died, I believe yesterday. And he's kind of the person who always leads us through this. He's the person, if we ask the question, like, can we do that? Can we find that? Is that possible? He's the one that we know knows the answer. We may have an idea, but he's the definitive answer because he's been doing this for so long. So it would be my suggestion, and we'll go as long as you want to go, but it would be my suggestion that we follow this agenda as long as we can get there. Obviously, the millage rate will have to be moved up. If we can do at least the police, the fire, and maybe the CRA and city clerk. If we can accomplish that much tonight, we will have done a lot. We have to do the millage as well, as he said, because it has to be on our next agenda for approval by August 4th. Does everybody agree with that? Or do you just want to keep going and let him listen to the meeting and try to figure out what we're saying? Just go until we get tired and get through.
To the city clerk, I think that's good. The millage rate's important.
Is the back row okay with that? Everybody on that back row okay with that? I know y'all all worked hard to present tonight, but I think if we can go at least that far, that'll get us somewhere. Okay,
Council
so,
President,
yes ma'am.
I'm willing to be moved if one of the other people want to present theirs, because I think they're really, really ready.
Well, we'll talk about it as we go. I know they're ready. I know they're all ready to get it over with. But we'll go one at a time as we go. And if anybody disagrees with that, tell me now, please. We'll see what time it is by the time we get that far. Okay, budget introductions by departments. Ms. Foreman.
Good evening, Council. Seeing the first two items on this agenda is police and fire, and they fall under the mayor's supervision, I will turn this over to him to introduce his departments and their budget.
Thank you, Jackie.
You're welcome.
Chief Stegall,
Yes, sir.
could you do your budget?
Presentation?
I'll think of what it's called here, your video,
PowerPoint?
thank you, PowerPoint, so that they have an idea of what we're talking about here.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, right ahead.
Please note on the agenda, we skipped police, and we'll go back.
Yes, I wanted to go through him first because the police are difficult.
Okay?
I don't know about that. Sure. Every year, as Mr. Patricia's pulling this up, every year I put together a package like this for you guys to get an idea of what we've done, what we've accomplished, and where we're at with the fire department. If you can flip to the first one there, Patricia. Okay, and I don't know that any of you have had a chance to go through this, but this just shows you our call load over the last few years. And we tried to pull out the calls that we run into the county that the county reimbursed us for. And the reason we did that, there's some of those are still in there. The reason we did that is because we were paid separately for those. Okay? So that, as the county reaches an adequate staffing level, that those calls could go down. So I'm just trying to give you a ballpark figure of what our calls have increased, over the last few years, last 5 years.
Steady
Yes, ma'am.
increase.
Steady increase. And here's what we currently have in our firefighters and our personnel, the city, what the city currently pays, who we pay for, and their current levels of training. When it comes to 30 firefighter 2s, 4 firefighter 1s, 2 are enrolled in firefighter 1, 20 paramedics, 14 EMTs, 2 EMRs. Everybody familiar with what those terms are when I'm just spitting them out? EMR is just an emergency medical responder. That's a 40-hour basic training. I started to take a shot at my police friends, but I didn't. 4 currently attending paramedic school. And then again, we can come back to the calls of service and our average response times inside the city limits. And I want to talk about inside the city limits a little more detailed. Looking at it, at what we're going toward, and I've been studying, trying to get an idea of where we're going to be in the future, trying to prepare for the future. If we continue along the same rate, this is just inside the city. And I'm looking at potential growth, the number of houses that we have in the city now versus the number of calls we run inside the city limits. In just a couple of years, we'll be running on the average around 1,200 calls inside the city limits per year. So that's just some numbers for you to look at. It shows our current response time inside the city is 5 minutes, 5.12 minutes, and then your county calls and, overall response time is 8.27, which is under the national average for paid fire departments, full staffed paid fire departments. And 63% of our calls are outside the city limits. We had 22 structure fires this last budget cycle for a fire loss of $1.8 million.
One question.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we ever file a claim with insurance companies for the fire department? Somebody asked me that.
That's a very good question. We actually used to do that, and we haven't readdressed that, and maybe that's something we do need to readdress, because we did it for years, and then our city attorney advised us if we don't do it everywhere, we can't do it. Well, we can't do it outside of the city limits because that's not under. Yes, we provide fire protection for them, but unless the county specifically give us permission to do that, and I don't know that they can, we can't file an insurance claim because we're paid to go there. I don't know, that fell under a different regime and a different old city attorney. That would be a question we could ask our current city attorneys to see. That's a good question. I wish I knew the answer exactly, but I don't.
Now I know what you know anyway. So that's good.
What we have achieved, we had 3 of our young folks complete paramedic school, 6 employees completed rope operations, 7 completed VMR. Now, just so you know, VMR is a vehicle and machinery extrication class. 3 employees completed pump operations, 2 completed their Fire Officer 1 series, and 2 employees certified as fire service instructor. Now, one of the things I want to point out about our fire department as I go through stuff like that, about this one completing that training and that one completing this training, we go into the high school and recruit. And what we do is we go in there and we bring out these young folks who are interested in a career in this, and we mold them and form them into moving in this direction. Once we help them get in that place where they're going to be a professional firefighter or EMT or whatever they're going to be, most of them will stay here and work part-time for us. And the cost benefit there, it's hard to say, but I've got some numbers I want to throw at you real quick that's just not in there. To give you an idea, and when we talk about benefits and stuff for the fire department gets retirement, FRS retirement. We know that. That's the only benefit the firefighters get because they're part-time, right? But we have a staff that basically treats us like we're a full-time professional fire department. We don't miss a beat. We've never missed a call in the last 20 years. We're on everything. But to give you an idea what it costs when it comes to the burden of an employee, we talk about paying hourly rates, but we always end up having to look at the last number, the burden, when it comes to benefits, right? And just to give you an idea, an annual average tax and benefit on one of our firefighters, what do you think it is? $5, $7, $10, $12, $13,000? $3,700. $3,700. To give you an idea, and I spoke to my counterpart over here earlier today about this, just so I could get his permission to do this. The average tax and benefits for a street and parks employee, $14,247 per employee. That's for retirement, medical, and everything. So I'm just giving you that cost analysis, cost benefit of what we get there. So there's some numbers there. There's some warrant there. The fire department formulas, Williston Fire Rescue is a combination part-time paid department, and we do have some volunteers. The majority of which are part-time paid. Currently, WFR has 1 full-time position. That would be me. You elected to pay me this last year to come on as a full-time chief, and I am grateful for that. It has been a dream of mine for years. So, we reclassified from a part-time to a full-time position. The majority of our personnel work for other departments. And they work for Ocala Fire Rescue, Alachua County Fire Rescue, Gainesville Fire Rescue, Marion County, Citrus County, even Levy County. And what the benefit for us is they keep up most of their training, they pay for the majority of their training, and we reap the benefits. So it's been a really good system. You know, I don't think I need to say that in the past 7 years, we implemented FRS retirement for our personnel. That was our benefit we talked about earlier. Firefighter 2s are paid hourly, regardless of rank. Firefighter 1s are paid as a stipend for station standby, as they have been since the day I started as a volunteer in the 80s. Yes, ma'am.
So go back one, if you will, Latricia.
Go back. You got a question?
No, I mean, that's the slide you're talking about, I think.
Yes, ma'am. I was going on past it.
Okay.
Yeah. And once again, this is just how the pay formulas work. You know, the reason I put this in there this year, last year I was asked about it, and I just wanted to make sure everybody understood how everybody was paid.
And have you talked to everybody here, or do you want to
I
explain that?
have talked to I don't think anybody has any questions on it. I have talked to everybody about how they're
Everybody
paid.
knows what duty call and call out pay, what the difference is and when it kicks in. Everybody knows that.
No questions?
Last year, nobody knew. So that's a very big improvement.
Yeah, we went through it twice in both budget workshops last year, so I wanted to make sure I had it in this year.
Yeah.
And then the next page is going to show you the fire department work schedule. And this is an educational process. I want everybody to understand what you have here. It talks about the day coverage, it talks about the night coverage, and it even talks about the proposed night coverage. And, we've increased so much in our call load, it's becoming a situation where we're sending one person out there and it's just not safe. And then the next page, please, for your information. I think you skipped a page. There you go. Yep, you skipped a page there. And the reason you all got new packets, I think everybody got new packets, sorry, is because I talked to the Inverness Fire Chief this morning, and he gave me their numbers after their last budget meeting, so those changed. But you can see where we're currently at Williston, and last year, Miss Jackie asked me to go out and get comparable fire departments, comparable cities, so we could look at the numbers of what the cost is and what people were paid. And so I did. I followed up on that, and these, with the exception of Inverness, these are current as of June 1st of this year.
And how many of these are volunteer and work part-time like we do? I know Chiefland does, essentially.
That's it.
That's the only one that really operates the same way we do.
That's the only one. And Chiefland has two. Okay, well, before we go any further, Chiefland has their full-time chief and 2 full-time firefighters on duty 24/7. So they have 7 full-time employees at Chiefland. Their part-time staff is, I'm looking for a nice word, it's small in comparison. I'm not knocking them guys, they do a great job, great people, but that's the current rates of the other surrounding cities of this area. Next page, please.
Chief, can I ask you a question?
Yes,
If
ma'am.
I can, just to make sure there's not an error in our packet,
Uh-huh.
on the staffing plan, your salary shows at 60, but on here it shows 65. What is that?
Yes, ma'am.
What happened?
And then it shows something different somewhere
On another
else.
page.
Sure.
On another page, it
Sure.
shows something different.
It's 65,000
Okay.
was the starting pay, and it's supposed to be 65,000 annually. I went back and checked to make sure, just to let y'all know. I'm not sure where it come up with the 60, but if you look, like when we start talking about asking for increases and all, it shows this giant number. That's not right. It should have been at 65 moving up. So the staffing plans that all first come out to me had 65,000 listed. And you remember in our budget meeting the other day, I said I was going to speak to Stephen, and I called him and he didn't answer, so I sent him a text message of a picture of that with the correct number wrote beside it, and he's tied up. He's very busy. So, yeah.
One
Go
other
ahead.
question along that same line.
Uh-huh.
Under the Williston column,
Yes, ma'am.
it shows the firefighter 2
Yes,
as $12.49.
that's correct.
If you look at this staffing sheet
Yes, ma'am.
that came from Stephen,
Yes.
it says $17.87 an hour.
Which staffing? Let me find where you're talking. What page are we on?
It's You know that the one that was page 1 through 23 that he sent, I think Sunday?
I didn't get the one Sunday. Make sure, I just wanna make sure I'm on the right page.
This is in the book? Okay, so,
The one, the supplemental budget? Okay, sorry,
oh, the supplemental, there you go.
okay. And what page number are we on,
Page
Ms. Deborah?
Page
Two.
two.
Page 2.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And it says firefighter 2,
I just want to make sure I tell you the right thing before I make something up, to
and
try to
maybe
fool you.
that one's the call-out rate and one's the duty rate. I'm
Yep.
just trying to figure that out.
Okay,
But even the duty rate up here is showing as $14.94, not $12.49. So I'm just totally confused about that.
yes, ma'am. I fully understand. The firefighter 1 call pay, we're looking at firefighter 2 call pay, correct?
Yes,
Okay, 1787.
yes. That's what it says here, but that's not what it says on the paper, on the handout. That-
No, but no, because the handout is the starting pay. The handout that I give you is the starting pay over firefighter 2.
Okay.
And the firefighter 2 call out pay would be what they would get for an after hours call. Call out pay is like you come in from home for a structure fire
Right, right.
and you're an hourly person, you get your overtime rate. That's what you're looking at there. Does that make sense? Do you understand what I'm saying there?
I do, but
Okay.
even the duty pay up here says $14.94.
Duty pay is the average pay of what we pay an hourly employee to be at the fire station during the day.
Yeah, but none of them are $12.49.
I understand that. That duty pay is an average of what we pay the people to be at the fire station.
Okay,
So if I have a $12.49 employee,
Right.
and I have a $15 an hour employee, I took the two, added it together, and averaged it out, and that would be the pay number you see there. Why does Stephen do it that
so
way?
is this right? Which one's right?
This one should be, that should be,
I should look at the one in the budget, not the one on your PowerPoint, because it's just the low starting pay.
yes, that's just a starting pay. Of
Okay,
every department, when you see the $12.49,
yeah,
that's what a Williston firefighter 2, EMT/paramedic, whatever they are, starts at is $12.49. When you see the $17, that's what a firefighter 2, paramedic, EMT starts at. And you see the next 17 at High Springs, that is their bottom line starting pay. Our bottom line starting pay is $12.49.
okay, so because I don't have individual employees listed like every other department, I can't tell what they're really making.
Page 12.
In this PowerPoint has been broken down, each employee and what they make.
Yeah, the PowerPoint that we have up, go to page 12.
There aren't any numbers on our.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It says pay grade changes and their pay
Right
grade
there.
4 and 3.
Right
Keep on-
there.
Keep on going. One more.
Yeah, one more will put you
Right there.
on the firefighter 2s with a starting pay.
Okay, so these ones that have been here for only a year
Yes, ma'am.
are making the $12.49.
That is correct.
And your proposal is to move them to $16.
Yes, ma'am.
You're laughing, I'm laughing too.
Yeah. Well, the thing of it is last year, and I know it's a significant, and it's your favorite way, it's across the board.
I know, you know how much I like it across the board, right?
So you have to laugh when you're having fun. But last year we brought a high number to you guys, and you knocked us back to $1, and you told me to bring it back this year. So I brought it back this year, and I did what I was told. I went around and evaluated all the area fire departments. I took that number and I looked at where, if you'll look, it's going to 16. We would still be under what the average fire department is making out there.
But not the average volunteer fire.
Well, I got it.
Now,
Hello?
go ahead.
I got a question. So, the average, say, city employee without any certificates or anything, what do they start at? Like, say, an average worker to come up here and want to start at
A crew worker starts at $13.49.
Well, that's the crew
$13.49.
worker. Is that the lowest one? But there are others that started.
I just kind of have an idea of somebody without certificates or certifications or training or anything, kind of where they're starting out at the city.
Am I wrong? I mean,
Okay.
1381. 1380? 1391.
1391.
Well, that's that particular job, but there are other jobs besides Public Works that make $12 and some odd 49 cents.
Okay, I just looked at Public
Yeah.
Works.
We have the school crossing guard, I think is the only one that was 13.
Well, he isn't here and here. He's at 12:02 right now.
Yeah, he's for 1202.
I can read it. 12:02
Well, I
right
mean, I
now.
was just curious, because, I mean, if it's firefighter ones or whatever, I mean, I don't know, just kind of getting an idea of when you start off there, what your pay is. It's almost more incentive to start at the city without a certificate than it would be to be a firefighter.
Well, you've also, don't get insulted, please, but you've also got to remember that all of these people have a full-time job somewhere else.
Oh, yeah, no.
We're their part-time job.
I know,
That helps add to their FRS.
I'm not
And
sure.
if I may add, their full-time job helps us to get their
Absolutely.
education
Absolutely.
without having to pay for it. So it is a two-way street. Yes, they have a full-time job elsewhere, but as the sheet pointed out, there is a benefit ratio to that situation for the city of Williston. Thank you.
I agree with that 100%. But they're probably making their $60,000 or whatever they're making.
You know, Ms.
At
Deborah,
their full-time job.
no,
They can't be expected to make $60,000 at this job.
okay, let's back up for a second. First off, they're not gonna make $60,000 here. Then that's not gonna happen. You know, we can go back and look at it. We don't have anybody working full-time except me. You know, I understand where you're coming from when you say that. And please do not get offended, but.
Yeah,
that-
if you don't get offended, I won't get offended.
Uh,
So we're
uh,
good. We're just fine,
Okay, but what they make it their full-time job is irrelevant to what we're talking about here. And I'm not trying to be smart.
It's also what we can afford.
I understand that, but please, when you talk about what they make somewhere else, that is completely irrelevant to what we're talking about. I was asked to bring these numbers back. I have brought these numbers back. What you decide to do with them is on you. You know, I'm telling you why these guys deserve this. I'm trying to be fair to them, and you know, I've done everything I can to make this a educational experience for everyone. But you know, these guys work extremely hard for us, and you know, I'm going to tell you something tonight. And I probably shouldn't say this. Mike's probably going to kick me under the table. But you know, there's two major things that I've asked for in my budget this year. And the city overall has been very good to our fire department. Y'all worked extremely well with me tonight. But I want to give you the level of dedication of our people. So I went around and I said, guys, we're asking for a lot of money. You know, if it comes down to it, what do you want? Do you want the raise? Or do you want the second guy at night? What do you think these guys said? They want that second guy at night. So, you know, it's hard to justify anything else for me. These are the people that we talk about are volunteers. They're not volunteers. We're not a volunteer department. We are a combination department. We pay people even though we don't have full-time employees. We keep the volunteer title because it helps us with grants. I'm not going to lie about that. That keeping the, you know, and the volunteers we have are great people. Most of the time our volunteers are young people that are trying to get a career start, and we help them do that. But for these guys to come
Please
up
don't
there,
think I have anything to say against your dedication. Your department is definitely dedicated.
I understand
I
that,
know that.
but I'm telling you, you know, that looking at this, I have done everything that you guys asked me to do when it come back to making that presentation.
So talk to us about the nighttime person.
Okay, currently, we have one person at night. And when you look at our call load, if you break out our calls, 38 to 44% of our calls, depending on the month, are at night. And we're sending one guy out there. And he's out there on that truck at night by himself a lot of times. A lot of times we have guys come in and ride as second man just to be safe and to help him covered. But that, last year we put the second man in the budget, then the second man for nights in the budget. You guys told us no, we couldn't have it, and told me to bring it back this year. Guess what? I brought it back this year.
So you told me how many hours. So would you estimate $65,000 to $70,000?
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, that's what I estimated.
Yeah, probably so.
Is that about right?
Probably so. It would be probably the equivalent, and I'm speaking off the top of my head here, when you start talking about what it costs for a mid-level employee with their tax burden and benefit burden, you're talking about that kind of thing for 2,080 hours, and help me out, Jackie, because I'm trying to get these numbers right here. But it's, you're looking at a mid-level and pay employee that's making in the 40s, upper 30s, 40s, are going to be costing you probably about $65,000 annually.
That's what I
50% of their salary, you can consider that the
I
burden.
think I went with $15 and I did it times 2,080.
Right. So, and that would be like 2,080 hours.
Right.
Now, what you're getting, you're not getting 2,080 hours. 2,080 hours is 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
You're getting a person 12 hours, 365 days out of the year for the same amount of money. So,
It's just where's the money coming from? That's what we have to figure out. It's all a matter of money.
if we could dig up some of them mason jars that were buried over the years, maybe we could do it. But these are where we're at. I know that my requests are extremely high. I've talked to Stephen about it. We've looked at different things. I don't have a proposal right offhand. Ms. Gorman and myself have talked about. Not me. Ms. Gorman and I have talked about some different options in the past. I've talked to some of you about some different options in the past. Different funding mechanisms, stuff like that. With the anticipated growth level of the houses coming into our community, we need to revisit some of that stuff. But that's down the road.
I actually expected some of that for this budget. And we didn't get it on the table. I know there's a study that has to be done first.
Yes, ma'am.
And if that was the case, if we're talking fire assessment, everybody, that's a nasty word, but if you talk fire assessment, then this is done without a problem.
I understand.
And maybe even better.
Yeah, I don't know that it'd be done without a problem, but it would definitely help. Definitely help.
I mean, the dollars would be there to do what you've asked us to do.
Right. Well.
If we had that.
Yep. What I've done tonight is I have brought back everything that I was asked to bring back.
Yep. And to continue on your slides, your capital is your scuba.
Yes, ma'am. My air packs, SCBAs, self-contained breathing apparatus. And if I remember right, in our discussions with Stephen, he said that whole figure had to count in toward the budget. Does that sound right?
If it is a grant.
Yeah, because it is a grant. So it actually shows up as a capital for our budget.
Revenue and expense.
Right.
It's a wash.
Right, it's a wash.
It's a wash, but it's in the budget.
Right.
And I explained this the other day in our staff budget meeting, that if we are funded through the AFG, that money comes first. It's not like the USDA where we pay for it out of pocket and then it comes back to us. This money comes in first.
And have we applied for it yet?
No, we can't apply for it till January.
Okay, not till January.
Yeah, and only if we were to receive that grant would we spend any of the money for the match. I mean, we applied for the extrication gear last year. Look where we're at. We're still waiting.
Yeah.
So
True.
we're just blessed enough to take care of some of that in a different way.
Absolutely. Any comments, questions for the chief?
Yes,
I saw Mr. Cox first. I'm sorry.
Mr. Cox, please, go ahead.
Yeah, let me get to my page here.
Yeah, let us know when you find it. I think we're all on the same page.
Comparable area fire departments.
Yes, sir.
When I look at the list, you compare Williston size to Inverness. Inverness is a whole lot bigger. High Springs, probably a little bigger than Williston, but taxes and everything there, because of Alachua County, sure are higher. Same thing with Newberry. Of course, Newberry is going through major growth over there. If you've been on 41 driving from Newberry to High Springs.
Yep, I've been on the phone with the chief from Newberry several times.
Chiefland and Lake City. Lake City's huge. So comparing those prices to those cities that are just so much bigger than we are, that's where I struggle with that.
So in defense of that, in all honesty, if you look back at the cities we've compared to, we run into the issue many times of we can't find a city that has the exact same demographics that we do. So what we have to do is we find a city that is close to what we have. And these cities are very close to what we have. Yes, they do have some bigger areas. Inverness is a bigger town. You look at the exact population of the city of Inverness, it's not that big of a city. It's a bigger county area.
The one that's most like us is Chiefland,
Well,
obviously.
yeah, obviously Chiefland is smaller than us by several thousand people when it comes to population.
And if I can add, Chief, High Springs has got a fire assessment. High Springs has got a fire assessment.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I thought so.
That's
And Inverness has very high numbers.
I can't hear you. I'm deaf.
And Chiefland just passed a fire assessment, so theirs is probably gonna go up.
These are some of the same cities that have been used for the other studies here for our city, just so you know, Mr. Collins. Some of these same towns have been used. We've used towns like Tavares, if I remember right, as a study when we looked at other salary comparisons. And if you go to Tavares, when I played high school football in 1981, Tavares was the same size.
That was a different town.
Yeah. Go down to Tavares now. I compared them to as close as I could find, and I used some of the same cities we've used in the past.
Just one other thing. Explain, because we have some citizens in here, explain the fire assessment.
A fire assessment is, for all general purposes, in the words of my boss, a fire tax. We went down this venue when he was on the city council several years ago, and the difference between an assessment and the way other things work is assessment goes toward everybody. Everybody pays an assessment. The only person that has an exemption for a fire assessment is who you give it to. So if you did if somebody had a hardship and they come in and applied for it, you could grant them a hardship for that fire assessment. And now, if we grant that hardship on that fire assessment, we have to make that up by law out of the general fund. So if we go for tax exempt buildings, you usually like a church or a not-for-profit type building, if we give them an exemption, we have to bring that money forward out of the general fund to replace that. But it is assessed, generally it's assessed on a residential has its own set rate, commercial has its own set rate, industrial is usually done by the square foot, and vacant property is a different formula for taxing it because of the different fire loads. You can go in, and I'm just throwing numbers at you, please don't remember any of this. You can go into, say, an industrial setting like Monterey Boats, and you could say, well, if I did it by X number of dollars per square foot, their fire assessment could be $100,000. But you can go back and you can put a cap on that. You can say that assessment can only go to this level. So you can do things like that to make up the difference in the fire assessment. But once again, if you put that cap, you've got to make up that funding out of your general fund. Because you can't, what you couldn't do is on the backs of citizens, you can't put the full burden for somebody else. You follow what I'm saying? That burden has to be separated fairly. And if Mr. Fuller over here in the city, I mean, I'm talking about he'd sell everything to give it to me, I know, but he, he's paying his fair share. You can't put more tax on him to make up for what this, B4 signs over here business is doing, because they have a too much square footage. You cannot do that. There's other options we can look at too besides that, and I know that this is not the forum for all of that, but we could look at fire impact fees, things like that come along, emergency services or public safety impact fees as a whole, and these are some of the things with the growth that's coming that we're going to have to address. And I know that I've gotten way off of where we need to be tonight, but
Certainly have.
Not really, because we need to know where we're going in the future.
right.
Because if we did come up with the money to do something substantial this year, we would have to have the money to continue it.
Oh, absolutely.
So you have to plan for the future. as
Sure,
well.
sure.
Because the burden is real.
No, it is. The burden is real. And I can only go back to the point where we are so blessed for what we pay for and what we get out of what we're paying for.
Absolutely. You got a great group of people.
No offense to anybody, but when you refer to Williston Fire, I have a friend of mine who's with law enforcement, and he's not sitting right beside me this time. I do consider him a friend sometimes. But the others who have said, it has always bothered me when city council refers to our department as volunteer. And that's no offense to you, Ms. Jones.
That's because that's what you call it.
Yeah, it is. But I'm gonna bring that to you after this budget cycle's over, and you can do what you want. But he said, I look at your guys out here training. I look at your response. I see how many calls you go on. He said, you haven't been volunteering in a long time. And he's right. We've been paying people to be in that station for how long now?
It's just those $10 guys that are still volunteering.
Yep.
And like you said, it's been $10. I think it's been $10 since the 70s.
It has been $10 for quite a while. And, actually, we give them raises last year upon your insistence.
I saw that.
Yes.
So you see, I saw
So,
that just a little bit.
but, this is the presentation I put together for you guys tonight, so you could know an educational process about the fire department, and you could have a little bit of insight of what actually happens and how it actually operates. I do know that there's a lot there in those budget requests. I tried to keep all of everything else as low as I possibly could. I'm going to just say this is where we're at right now.
And that's my only issue. I'd love to give you every dime you ask for, and we may, because I'm just one person. But $243,513 is a lot in staffing alone. That's $250,000.
You don't think you can make it up out of your church salary?
No.
Okay.
That's $250,000. That's a lot of money in salary adjustments alone.
Oh, I understand. And you know what? And you're absolutely right.
So I don't know.
But how did we get here? How did we get to this point tonight? Do you know? Think about it. You ever heard the old saying about kicking the can?
No.
We have kicked that can down this road so many times. Miss Gorman has been instrumental in helping me get some of this. She has been very good about giving me information to go up and do this, about how to present it, with getting the numbers from the other cities, and what we should look at. She gets aggravated with me sometimes because we argue back and forth about it, but she's right.
Well, the education and how they're paid too, the duty
Sure.
pay as well as flipping to
Sure.
the overtime pay when they go on call. All that is very educational.
Yeah. Okay. So just so everybody understands, when it comes to that, because that was something that was brought up. If they're on duty and they go on a call, there is no flip. They're on duty. So if they're being paid straight time,
Cool.
they go to the call on straight time.
I had no idea.
Yeah. The only time The only time they flip is when they're off duty.
And come in.
Yeah, it's no different than a lineman being called in for an electrical outage.
Okay? Now, that makes me know that the duty pay in my book is the one we need to raise.
Correct, but you can't raise the duty pay without raising the call-out pay.
That's our overtime rate.
Yeah, because it's gonna increase your overtime rate. The Garcia Act of 19-something, which talks about how people are paid. Once we go and we pay somebody an hourly rate to do a job, we can't change that hourly rate. And I'm gonna give you an example. If Donald, you're not hourly
Wait a minute,
anymore.
say that again.
The Garcia Act,
I know that, but what did you just say?
I'm gonna give you an example of how it works.
Okay,
If a person is paid an hourly rate, and if we're talking about if the guys on Public Works call somebody in, and we pay them an hourly rate to do a job, run a backhoe, right? They're gonna go, oh, you know what? I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna volunteer Saturday at Cornelius Williams Park, and I'm gonna use that backhoe to dig that same hole they were paying me with Friday. We can't do
yeah,
that.
I'm aware of that.
That's against the law.
It applies to the police department too.
It applies to everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody. It's called the Garcia Act, and that stops people from volunteering. If you remember, when we were a lot more volunteer, we had a lot of guys, Jonathan being one, who was a volunteer for our fire department. But what we found out was because they were working a job for the city, we were supposed to be paying them an hourly rate if they were going to run that call, even though they weren't a state certified firefighter. And it gets to be a weaving web when you get into all of that. But the meat and potatoes of it is you can't change that. If we pay a guy $10 an hour and he's on his call out rate, that's $15 an hour. We can't change that. You can't change their call out pay to something different other than their overtime rate. That would be going, that would get us in a bind. You're thinking,
I don't know that that's what I meant.
okay.
I don't think it is either.
It might not have been, I'm sorry.
I don't think that's what I meant.
Okay.
It could be, maybe I misunderstand what you're saying. What I'm saying is if it's the duty pay
Uh-huh,
that sits in the station,
right,
2 guys in the daytime.
Right.
1 guy at night presently,
right.
and they don't flip to overtime when they get a call,
They don't.
why not pay them more to begin with?
Oh, I'm all about it. That would put us at $16 an hour starter.
Well, see, that's what, I would be more in favor of raising that.
Yeah, but here's,
The calling back.
yes ma'am.
Pay.
What will happen, and y'all correct me if I go wrong here, but if we raise their pay, their hourly rate, we're gonna raise their overtime rate.
Well, yeah, for that particular person,
Yes.
but,
Please, Stephen
but
breaks it
some
down, it's
people,
confusing.
I mean, I've got your whole list here, I don't know whether anybody else has it, but.
Okay.
Some people only come when they're called.
Yep.
They don't work in the station as a duty call.
There are very few that don't work in this station
On shift.
on shift.
On shift.
Yes, ma'am.
There's requirement.
There are some that work very little,
Yes, ma'am.
put it that way.
Right.
And some who work mostly in there
Right.
and don't get called in a lot.
That-
Probably
right.
because they're at their job.
That they're at their job or they live a significant distance out of town, so they just don't come in.
Right. So, do you have it? I lost my place again now. I've got so many papers here. What is the pay? I gotta find it again. It's in this stack.
Well, you're looking for that.
Yes,
right?
please, absolutely.
All right, so you're full-time now, you're working 40 hours?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And your assistant chief, how many hours does he work?
It varies.
Okay, average?
I can tell you.
Okay. I can't. I don't have that paper.
What about your captain?
It varies.
It tells you by name how many hours they worked right there and how
Okay.
many hours they earned.
Yeah, we never received that.
I just got it this afternoon.
Yes, ma'am, I just never,
Probably 4 o'clock.
maybe I got an email at 4 o'clock, I
It's
don't
the
know.
same one I had last year, I asked for it again this year.
Okay.
I'll be glad to let you take a picture of it, or I'll make you a copy.
All right, so tell me what their average is. I don't know, Mr. Cox.
Oh, sorry. It's the total pay here. It's got the duty call, it's got the call pay, the duty pay, the call pay, it's all broken out into different categories.
Okay,
And it tells how much FRS they got, which is their benefit,
right,
and what their total amount is thus far this year and what it's projected to be by the end of the year.
okay,
And you have quite a few, that are over 25,000.
okay,
Probably 6 or 8. And
All right.
a couple that are over 35,000.
all right,
And one that's right out 50,000.
okay, and I'm gonna go with this, just a question, and your point is?
I'm just trying to get an average of what, like your captains, you got your call-out people,
Yeah.
the ones
Right.
who are in the station.
Sure,
That's all.
sure.
Just trying to figure out.
Mr. Cox, I haven't seen that paper you're talking about, so I don't know, I mean, I may have got it at 4 o'clock this afternoon,
You did, because it just got sent to me.
okay, but,
Because I asked for it.
you know, I can't give you an average on exactly how much each person is gonna make. I can tell you this, generally, the people who make more of the money are the people who are more dedicated to serving your citizens. They're out there. Now, my assistant chief, let me tell you about him a little bit. So we had a couple of weeks ago, like in the 4th of July week, that young man busted his butt up there trying to get everything in line. And then the day of the 4th of July celebration, he come in at 4 a.m. in the morning and started cooking and didn't go home till 12 o'clock that night.
Well, we fed everybody, right?
He fed everybody, you know, so I'm not sure.
Okay, so if the duty pay is $14.94, and you want to raise it to 16, it says on there 12.49, but on here it says 14.94.
Okay, the duty pay isn't, on that paper that you're looking
Is the
at,
average,
is an average.
okay? So let's say it's 14.94.
Yes, ma'am.
And let's just say we raise it to the numbers you got up there for the duty pay,
Okay,
for the duty pay.
okay,
And the call pay,
the call pay.
I'm thinking.
I thought I smelled wood burning. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's definitely burning. So now you got my paper, I can't look at it. I should take a picture of it, since I have it on my phone. It was emailed to me from Landmark, that's where it came from, so. Infomart, I still call it Landmark, sorry. Okay, I got it right here.
Yeah, no, we do understand that the only individual in the staffing plan for the fire department is me.
Right.
Okay, so when you look at firefighter 2 call-out rate, that is their overtime rate for coming out. That is an average of all of the firefighter 2s. When you look at fire team leader, that is an average.
I got it back again.
Yeah,
So the fire team leader is 404, which is the top one on your slide, so that's an average number. Go back to the one you were just at, Latricia, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and where you've got the word pay grade, I don't recognize those pay grades either.
you don't, because that's currently what we worked on, getting our people into a pay grade over the years.
But they're not existing pay grades that the city has.
You're absolutely right.
Is it I think I figured it out. It's the line item number that is for your department. Is that what it is?
No, no.
No, ma'am.
So what'd you just do, make it up?
Yes, ma'am.
No.
Yeah,
It
well,
was
yes.
2012, the pay compensation plan for the city of Williston had the regular 1 through 30 pay grades, which is probably what you're referring to, that these numbers are not it. There was an addendum in the pay compensation plan that had 400 and 500 numbers, which represented the police department and the fire department pay grades.
But I don't think that one was ever accepted.
Yes, ma'am,
or
it
adopted.
was. It was.
By
And
the-
then
by the
it was.
city council?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So then in the following years, the next one that I think that we were able to get our hands on was 2018, and it was no longer in there.
Yeah, I've
But
never seen them before.
what you have to understand too is dealing with like the police department, they're not on a 20/80 pay scale or pay hours. That's not the number of hours that they work. The pay grades of 1 through 30
Right.
are based on a 20/80.
Right.
So we have had the conversation with Ms. Foreman and Ms. Nelson in multiple conversations about looking at the pay grades and developing the correct pay grades to be able to identify
They're
these
not, you
positions.
haven't developed them as yet.
No, ma'am.
That's why I
They're
never-
developed, they're sitting here waiting for us to determine what your decisions are on the pay, for us to put them into the pay grades, and then that is going to be presented to council if I'm not.
It is,
Right.
because the compensation plan has not changed in so many years,
Right.
that it's not staying in line with your minimum and your maximum
Yeah, oh, yeah.
for each grade.
I knew it all has
So,
to go up.
once
every
we
time.
figure all this out, we
Sure.
gotta go back and analyze it and get our compensation plan updated and adopted for our, HRM.
Yes, ma'am,
Sorry.
you turned it off.
I'm sorry.
The pay grade is one of the things that we were asked to bring back, and that's what we did.
I have a question, just so we are all on the same page. When you came up with your rates, those are rates now, that everybody might have already done all of their compression and the minimum wage.
Yes, ma'am.
Considerations,
Those are,
right?
you're talking about the rates for the current cities?
Yeah, so we don't have to do that again.
Yes,
with-
you know, yeah, and, you know, if you,
Talking about the individual employees, not the city.
no, she's talking about what the other cities have
Well,
done, I
yeah,
believe.
I want to make sure that what he did his comp
Okay.
So-
included all of that.
Right.
Because we did not include that last year. We were hoping, what I was trying to get everybody to do is get all equal, and then we were gonna decide how we're gonna deal with the compression and the minimum wage. So now it's kinda.
Right, because I know
Some
the
have, some
utility
have.
department didn't do it that way.
Right, that's
this year.
correct, that's correct.
Right.
You know, in past, leadership, I'm gonna revert back to that kicking the can down the road, because I said past. It was, you know, the fire department, and this is what we talked about, the fire department was left out of that multiple times. You know, when we discussed pay grades, the fire department was left out multiple times. So, you know, and regrettably, this is where we're at.
Okay, so tell us how we could pay this $250,000. Give me some ideas. Give us some ideas.
Bake sale?
I mean, I don't know where to come up with it, so help me with it.
I'm sorry. Y'all probably didn't hear that comment.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah, okay, yeah. IT Superintendent Mills suggested a bake sale.
That's a lot of bacon.
Yeah, car wash. You know, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. The raising of the funding is not my forte. You know, I would love to be able to sit here and tell you I know exactly where this money's going to come from. I don't.
Me either.
You know, you know.
You got any suggestions? No?
Were you asking me?
I'm asking everybody.
Oh, okay. What I would tell you is that we need to be much more careful in where we are spending money and be much better at addressing needs instead of wants. And I suspect that we could find a great deal of that money, but that is not the mayor's job. It is the council's job, and I will support the council in whatever they choose to do. I do believe that the city manager has pointed out a number of times. The fire department and the police department have not been funded the way the rest of the city departments have been funded for a number of years. And we all recognized it. We all just assumed that Lamar could keep working his magic because they all think so highly of him. He will keep getting them in, and Chief Rolls will keep going to all of the graduation ceremonies and putting a pitch out there for these graduating officers and keeping us in where we want to be without having the funds to be what we should be. It is the council's preview. I do not intend to be involved in that, but I do believe that there is room. Maybe we can't give the fire department everything they want, but we could certainly make a big step forward.
Okay, and as I said earlier, the $250,000, the
Yes, ma'am.
the $224,000 is the salaries only. We're also talking about that $65,000 to $70,000 for the second officer
Yes.
for the night shift. So we need to have some conversations about that.
Do we really want to continue to have one fireman
No,
go out on call? That is, I can't imagine that we would
well,
continue
usually
down
I
that
think it
path.
would be a response to an accident or something.
Yes, ma'am. The only reason they're going out is for a lot of times, I'm gonna throw this out there. A lot of times, that guy takes off in that engine by himself going to a structure fire.
Yeah.
And we're trying to back up to get, people do come in a lot of times to help him out, but you've got that one guy who's there initially by himself.
Yeah.
And that is the most dangerous time of any emergency,
And
is the
those
first 10
people
minutes.
that are coming in because they're dedicated. That is why they're doing it, because they believe in the system that Chief Stegall has set up, and they feel that our city cares about it. So, I would like to apologize to you, Chief Stegall. I knew that it was a lot of money, but I had no idea they were gonna grill you this hard.
It's okay, I got big
After
shoulders.
this, the police will be simple.
I don't know about that.
It's
I
true.
don't know about that.
I'm thinking about a break.
This might not be I don't know if it's a good question, bad question, I don't know, is there a way that if we've got a second person in there at nights that we can try to keep it as one of the lower paid? Is there enough of those people to keep a full-time shift to where it did help keep that expense down a little bit?
I mean, obviously, we can try to do that, but generally, Jared Caswell is one of my lieutenants, and he does an outstanding job scheduling. And what Jared has to do, because we work so many we have people working different jobs, he calls and basically says, what is your availability? Who can work this time period?
That would be a tough thing to do.
And it's hard,
Nightmare.
but one of the things that when we first started, we tried to use the firefighter ones as much as we could. Why? Because it was the cheapest thing. We could attempt to do that, but I don't know that we would be successful at doing that.
No, I'm not talking.
And I'm not talking about just trying to use firefighter ones. I'm just talking the lowest paid person.
I have a question, just asking while you have some kind of model you use, but what would happen if you did the $1 an hour for all of them? What does that look like? For all the salaries in your department?
If we did another $1 an hour like we did last year.
I know, I'm just asking, because I'm going somewhere with this.
I did not do that model.
I just wonder.
Yeah.
Because-
I'm gonna tell you this, that I talked to Stephen about some various models, looking at different things. But obviously, he has been way too busy to look at everything.
Okay.
And then with this last thing, I can't tell you that. I
We have
don't know.
time between that, we're gonna try and do another workshop, right?
So-
The reason I'm asking that, there's a couple concerns that's happening, and we've been warned about this over and over. At some point, the electric utility is not gonna be able to contribute. There's a movement to stop electric utility from funding general fund. We've talked about it, I keep asking the questions with FMEA, and they're like, what's happening is when you make it an enterprise fund, a lot of people feel like it's, what I'm saying is, but the money out of electric supports this, big time. If it goes away, we're really in trouble. So, we need to be working towards another funding source, right?
We do,
However
that's why
that
we
looks
talked
like.
about it earlier.
So my thought was, if we're all looking, if the whole city and police and fire and all this, look at $1 an hour, what would that look like on our budget? While we're trying to find funding for the fire department, that will sustain them. I'm looking-
So are you talking, and I'm just.
It's just
I'm
a model thought,
Right,
just a
I'm just
thought.
asking a question.
Uh-huh.
So we're talking about $1 across the board for all city employees, is that what I'm hearing?
Well, right now, just police fire, just to see where that would compare to what you're asking for now, but, if we did that with everybody, what would that look like in our budget? And usually Stephen can just put in a number and just tell us what it looks like, but he's not here.
Right, now, I will say this.
What
and-
would happen?
Yeah, I don't know what that would do for the numbers.
Let's give you your night shift person.
Yeah, the night shift person, obviously, that was my next question. You're talking about $1 an hour and keeping the night shift person?
I started to say, I think the night shift person is a no-brainer.
I do too,
I
right?
think we just ought to say
Okay.
right now
Yes.
that we want to do that.
Okay.
Especially since the firefighters want to do that.
They do.
That was one of their priorities.
That was their priority.
So, can we come to consensus? We're not voting tonight, it's a workshop. We have consensus, we want to add that nighttime.
Yes, I do.
That second nighttime person,
Yeah.
Okay.
Stephen, you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I don't know what to tell you. What I was going to say though is if you look at a fire assessment study, we're talking probably. I don't know. No, I don't think it'd be 100,000. But it's broken into. You have the people who do the study. You have the lawyers who say, yeah, the study's right. Then you have the lawyers who say, yeah, those lawyers are right. And it's a mixed bag. And it's very hard, very, very hard, and very, very, very time consuming to try to do it in-house.
Oh, yeah.
I did that once and
We ain't got time to do it in the house. We're
No.
going to hire somebody.
no.
But what I'm hearing you say is that wouldn't fund the whole budget anyway, that just fund part of it, and then of course you've got revenues from the county too, right? Just wondering what it would look like if that could hold us long enough to get started on an alternative funding, source. That's all I'm asking, if we can just hold on, give what we need, give some money to them, maybe not be all of it, get your nighttime shift taken care of, and let's see what that bottom line looks like.
I would at least go $2 an hour. I would too.
Okay?
Yeah, you can flip a burger at McDonald's right now for about $15 an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went through all of this with these departments last year when they got very little and was promised in the future that it was going to be addressed. Now we're doing it again. I just wonder if that's really the direction you want to go.
We wanted to do the whole thing, I just don't know that the money's there to do it, is our problem. We have to problem solve this, and that's all I'm
I
suggesting.
mean, I'm looking at the current rate, if you add $2 to the current rate,
Right.
for example, Mr. Neal, who's been there a long time, he's at $17.64, if you add $2, that's $19.64, they're asking for 21. And if you go up higher and you look at Mr. Caswell, at 1631, if you added 2, it would be 1831, they're asking for 1982. That's a pretty decent compromise.
Okay, let me just throw this at you.
Yes.
And I agree with you, boss man. If you go at $2 an hour across the board, your favorite way, Ms. Jones, across the board.
It's fair to everybody.
It is. Well, with me, Yeah, and if you go back and look at those numbers with my officers and everything, we're below where everybody at. If we do that and understand, we go back and we look at a fire assessment the following year, I will be coming right back
Sure.
next year and, asking to bump up again. But I think, if I could get those guys, at least that much moving forward, that is a step in the right direction.
I mean, that, you would have a funding source if you
Right.
came back with the fire assessment.
The biggest thing is, and I'm regretful that Stephen is not here to be able to be with us tonight, because most of the time he can tell you right offhand what kind of impact that's gonna have. But, we definitely could work around those numbers.
I mean, some of them are $4.55 an hour. I don't think we can do that. And when I say that, I'm looking at the one.
You're talking about increase.
Right.
Okay.
I don't think we can do $5 an hour. And like I'm looking at Mr. News, when I'm seeing 1751, he wants to increase to 21. That's a big jump. But if we did the $2, it's 19, so that's pretty close. And I don't know if we can afford that, but I think it's a good place to start to see what the figures look like.
Keep in mind too, last year, we only brought those salaries up for those employees that were way below. So not everybody got a raise, just so you know, just reminding everybody that not everybody got a raise. Yeah, the whole city. So we tried to just comp, we were just comping at that time.
It's all across the country. Well, to comp, if we were gonna comp them, it would be what he's asking for.
I understand that, yeah.
We just don't have the money to do it.
I know.
We wanna do it. What you think? Oh, well, yeah.
Ms. Jones, just for some clarification, I'm trying to find the $5 an hour raise.
The one, Mr. Moose.
He going from 1764 to,
2102.
And that's only $3.41.
That's on 351.
Everybody is at $3.51 across
Yeah.
the board. They're not staggered.
The math is
I
difficult.
usually do the math.
well, I think,
So you did it across the board?
Yeah.
You did? Yeah.
I told you.
Tell me that
We did.
I did.
I thought you copped it.
I think what might have confused you a little bit is you looked at the years of service on some of these guys and looked at,
I did.
and that might have threw you off a little bit.
You gotta move that over.
Maybe.
Yeah, I could move that line. Okay, so what you want me to do, or what we're talking about tonight is $2 an hour and my night firefighter. Am I hearing that right?
We're gonna include administration in that, because we didn't do any of that,
Yes.
so. Okay.
Are y'all okay with having it come back to, and look at it that says that?
Yes.
Yeah. And then we can go up or down from there.
Yes.
Hopefully if it looks.
Preferably up.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If it looks
I'm good. Yeah, I think, like I said, the guys were more inclined toward safety than they were a lot of stuff tonight, so.
That shows their dedication. It definitely
Yeah,
does.
and I will rework those numbers.
We would love
Somebody
to-
will rework those numbers.
We would
And,
love to give them the 351, but.
I understand, but, basically what I'm gonna tell them is, you guys, this is where you're at, and you told me to bring it back again next year, and it may be a 3-step program over 3 years to get them where they need to be,
Yeah, that's fine.
but we'll get there.
Another 2 next year, it'll be close.
Yeah, it will.
Depending on the-
Inverness will be done going up to $19 an hour then.
Okay, so do we need to talk about your capital? Talk to me about your capital, we're gonna move on.
My capital is only the SCBA's.
Okay,
Remember, we took the,
that's all I saw. though.
yeah, the grant funding. Now, in the 5-year plan, originally in the 5-year plan, and I'm gonna just touch on that while I've got the microphone in my hand, we had put in there to replace the tanker truck, and it was gonna be a $500,000 adventure. Since then, we have been in close discussion with, E1 and REV truck systems, and they think that we can totally rebuild that truck for probably half of that.
Really?
Yes.
Good.
So, that's new pump, redoing the chassis, redoing all the compartments for half the cost of buying a new one. And according to them, going by their word, that truck would serve us another 10 to 15 years. Well beyond my tenure.
Any ideas? Okay. Everybody happy with that so far? So far?
Thank y'all.
All right. Can we move to police now? You want to say anything
We
first?
can, but before we go to police, I just want to, we haven't talked about this, Chief. My understanding is that the deputy chief just went through a meeting on, the
pension.
Pension, thank you. The word completely escaped me. Are you fully cognizant of everything that he learned in that meeting, sir?
Yes.
Okay, you want to address it, or you want him to?
I didn't go to the meeting, he did.
Okay.
So I'll talk about it, okay, Mr. Mayor?
Because the thing I want everybody to consider, because we're struggling to supply our fire department with the necessary funds. So it's very difficult for our police department to caution us that if we take advantage of the reduced funds in front of us, there's going to be a price in the future. Please, Terry, take over.
And I have something to add when you're finished.
And Ms. Jones also is fully briefed on it, so, and I'm just gonna stand for a minute, kind of provide a moving target, so just in case it gets a little too crazy, but, so like last year, we came before the council and asked for the 6-year pension and brought our contribution rate to 19.4, I think 19.5. So, can you hear me, Mr. Ross? Okay, so then during the course of the actuaries, they take a look at how well-funded your pension plan is. Currently, our pension plan is for the law enforcement pension, police pension, is funded at 138%. So it's very solid. It did very well the last couple of years. The contribution rate that the city has to pay to the pension plan is based on a time frame that occurred from October of 2020 to September of 2021, correct? Right. Very solid.
Projections that also went
Right.
from March.
Very solid year. So that 1.7% that the city is required to pay for our police pension is a savings of about $85,000, right? So what will happen is that next year's contribution rate will be based on the year following that year, and then the next year's contribution rate, which will be the 23-24 year, will be based off what we're doing this year, right? So if we have a bad year this year, the contribution rate could be back up into the 19%. We expect it to be 1.7 this year, somewhere below 10 next year, and that's a guess because the actuaries have not told us yet. And then probably because this year has been so bad, we'll be back up to the 19% that we were contributing before, which is a far cry less than the FRS is. Not knocking the FRS system, but our pension is actually pretty solid. You're 185.
185.
Right, the 185. So you'll see an $85,000 savings in that. Now, the recommendation from the people that manage our account and the actuaries is that the city continue to contribute at that rate, and then that money actually goes into the pension as a savings account, not to the pension. And then when that 23-24 year shows up, you'll have money in the bank to offset any substantial increase. But once again, Ms. Jones, that's all depending on what the market does.
Conjecture.
Yeah.
And I could add that too, and this is for Stephen as well as anybody else. I did think about it as well. The General Employee Pension Committee had a meeting as well.
Yep.
We got the same forecast, and as you heard Mr. Bloom say, they don't have to pay anything. It was zero because it's so overfunded. I think we paid 1.94 was the number that we paid last year, which is way below what every other city is paying because we're so well funded. But
because it says zero, the projections went through last year, as Deputy Chief has said. And now that we're moving into a recession period, it's gonna drop. And because they're mutual funds and annuities and that sort of thing, and those things go up and down with the market. And that's where they invest the dollars. So with the recession looking like it's coming this way, the General Employee Pension Committee voted to recommend to the City Council, you obviously can't vote tonight, but I'll put it on the next agenda. We voted to ask you to keep it at 1.94. So that when it comes along and they lose money, that we will have maintained rather than lost. And I think that's about what you're saying as well.
Yeah, we didn't vote on it. We had, what they asked me to do is come to the council tonight during the budget workshop, is to convey the information to you, and then it's simply up to the council's will to do as they wish on which part they'll fund, the 19 or whatever.
Yeah, even if you didn't do 19, even if you did 10.
Right. Any little bit's gonna help. Now, like I said,
well funded.
yes, now the fund is well funded, and it actually is doing good. They even mentioned today, not that they would ever do that, but if you simply paid off everybody right now that was in the pension fund, the amount of money that they needed to be paid, at the end of that, we would still be able to retain 40% of the dollar.
Right, still have the 38%.
Right.
So.
So with that, is there any questions about that, the 1.7% contribution rate for the retirement or anything? Okay. So I'm gonna start off, and I'm gonna go ahead and say, just so everybody's aware, what we did is we did basically very similar to what the fire department did and through what the city did last year, almost exactly what the city did last year, is that, we took the cities that they used last year to figure out their comps, and not compression, but just their comps, and then use those to figure out really where we should be when it comes to law enforcement. So, basically the bottom line is that if you look through your packet, the very first one I handed to you is...
This packet or this packet?
The one I just gave you.
This one?
Yep. I'm going to sit down if it's okay at this point. So if you look at the very first one, basically what you're going to see is the pay grade for the police officers moving up all the way through the chief. And like I said, those are our pay grades, so if we were to get this approval, it doesn't mean that we're making this money, it just means that those are their suggested pay grades that we would be in. When you go to the next one, you look at basically even though we're not going to suggest that we can pay a police officer $51,771.72 a year, using the methodology that was used last year through the city, if you looked at the cities that were used, and I can cite, we had a meeting and we got the information from during the department head meetings of the actual cities that were used, and some of them were beneficial that had police departments and some didn't, and we had to come up with some different ones. But if you flip over to the very next page, you're going to see the actual salary surveys where we use the agencies to determine, what the hourly rate should be if we were to follow the same model for last year. So in other words, the agencies that we use basically were the Bellevue Police Department, Cedar Key, Chiefland, Dunellen, Fruitland Park, High Springs, Leesburg, Ocala, Santa Fe College Police, Wildwood, and then the Levy County Sheriff's Office. And then we left some out, like Wauchula County, or Wauchula, City of Wauchula, because simply it skewed the numbers so high that it was not usable for law enforcement. So it may have been great for the city to use last year, but for us the number was so high that there's no way we could actually felt confident in using that number.
Wauchula was so high?
Yeah, it's the medium, the 57,000 and some change is something like a police officer. I don't know where they get that money.
They really like to pay their police officers.
Yes, sir, they do.
I like to too, though.
Yeah. So I'm sure you're familiar with the way they did it last year, but you take the low and you take the high and you divide it in the middle, and that's the number hopefully you'll come up with. And so that was the numbers on the previous page that you saw, where everybody actually would fall into. But like I said, when you go back and you look at that, obviously, we cannot pay a city police officer $53,000 a year starting. Currently, starting pay is $36,000. The $2 an hour that Ms. Gorman talked about, will get us close in some areas, but it doesn't get us close enough. So we're going to have to maybe talk about that a little bit more. When you look at the next page over, it shows police officers, PFCs, corporals, and sergeants. If you look at, like I said, the sergeant's pay, we would end up, if we went by the same methodology and didn't throw out the high numbers, we'd be paying a police officer, police sergeant $60,000 a year, and simply, that's just not doable. It's not something we can bring to y'all in good conscience and say, hey, we want to do that. Then we looked at lieutenants, captains, deputy chiefs, and chiefs. So we ran it all the way up the flagpole, from the top on down, and compared also with them with the public safety telecommunications officers and their supervisors, and then basically the administrative staff, to give us a good idea there. And then the last page, if you look at it, that's just some of our numbers of our increases. So if you look at where we want to go, compared to the methodology that was used this year and last year, we come up with a starting pay for a first year police officer at $42,020 a year. That's up from $36,000. Now, I'll tell you that even at $42,000, that's $3,000 lower than what the Levy County Sheriff's Office is. And it's $10,000 cheaper than the method that was given to us to use, that we know we can't come to you and say, please pay a police officer $52,000. So we picked that number as a starting point, that we felt that we could attract police officers that would keep the ones we have here, and then we could move forward from there. The actual numbers and the increases that Ms. Gorman was talking about, the $2, when you look at some of the figures we did, and although we did not do an across-the-board pay raise, we're looking at increases hourly for the police officers of $2.75 an hour. For one police officer, $2.94 because of time and service and grade. $2.50 an hour for the next one. $2.57, $2.48, $2.43, $2.35. So we're very close to that ballpark figure that y'all are talking about for the police officers, and getting them to where we feel their comps are going to bring them up to the standard where we need to be. Now, we did not take into account compression, but compression did happen. It did take care of itself by us just taking a look at bringing the comps up, and it solved our compression problems. There was no intentions to take care of compression this time, but it just simply worked out that way. So when you look at our staffing increase as far as money-wise goes, I think the one figure, I can't quote it, we back to the book, maybe it's $111,000 total increase in salaries.
I think it's 144.
44, okay. And then we are all asking for some additional resources. But I'm going to let the chief jump in here with everything else, but I wanted to give you guys an idea of at least the method that we took to get there and the places that we used. And if you have questions as to comparisons of what we used the agency-wise and what was used, by the city last year, or why we did not use like some places, then I'll be glad to answer that.
Okay, so to follow up on what Deputy Chief Terry Bavard stated earlier, also looking around the globe, we know that the world is changing. Things are going right. So we did a little bit extra homework just to make sure that our numbers wasn't so far out of whack that we were bringing to the city council to approve. One being, we looked at Bellevue Police Department. Their starting pay for an officer with no experience is $53,518.40. We know we can't pay that. Levy County, talked to the sheriff. Their starting pay now for a deputy police officer is $45,000. Highway Patrol has increased their starting pay for highway patrolmen to $50,000. Talked to the Chiefland Police Chief. They're looking to move their starting pay from $33,700 to $44,000 or $45,000. So the competitive market is out there. We met with CFCC just the other day and had lunch with them. And you'll be amazed of how many agencies are coming to Central Florida Community College looking for law enforcement officers. And their pay grades are so high that what ends up happening is, for lack of better words, we get what's left. Which sometimes is not what you want. But, we have to keep bodies on the street because we have to patrol these streets to keep people safe. What is that?
Cross City.
Cross City starting pay is $46,500. Now, we're only asking to go to 42 to start our officers out so we can stay competitive in this market and that we can keep the good quality officers that we have currently now. A lot of the younger people that are getting into this profession, we all know, and I explained this to Miss Jackie before, you don't get in law enforcement because you want to ride around in a police car. A lot of these guys, they want to chase bad guys, they want computers, they want body cameras, they want tasers, they want all this stuff. Williston is not that city. We're not running up and down the road at 100 miles an hour.
Thank goodness.
Thank God, yeah. Thank God. We don't have the crime that a lot of people, a lot of cities are having. So like the mayor said earlier, I go to these graduations and I pitch Williston as, hey, it's a great place to start, it's a great place to learn. But at the same time, what that does for us is that makes us a training ground. They stay here for 6 months and they're gone. And then we start all over. And the cost of doing that is just outrageous to keep bringing people in, hiring them, giving them polygraphs, doing drug screens, buying uniforms, getting guns, tasers, vehicles. And the prices keep elevating. So by the time we do that, the price is so out of whack that it's cheaper just to up the starting pay.
Any questions for Chief Rolls? Yes, sir. Mr. Cox.
Since it's tough for us to be able to pay what other ones are doing, is making this a training ground a bad thing? Get contracts with the different departments and they absorb the cost of their uniforms and stuff like that, that we would do that.
You can't do that.
It doesn't work that way, Mr. Cox, and the reason why is every agency has their own standards and their own policies. And they train their officers to their standards and their policies. And Williston may not have their standards and their policies. So they go to the law enforcement school for that training. They're not going to turn around and pay us to train them more, and especially to train them on our policies and not their policies. So no, that's not a fit.
Okay, because I'm just trying to figure out, again, in the back of my mind is the bill that Jackie talked about. If they pass that, we're hurting.
Well, I understand that, but since the century, in the history of law enforcement has never been a money-making entity. We all know that. It's never been that. And I don't see it being that here in the future of a money-making operation. That's not what law enforcement is about. It's about providing a service and protecting the citizens in the city or in the county. And that's why they pay their taxes. So that's what we have to do, and we just have to figure out how we can continue to fund this if that goes into place like Ms. Jackie said.
And we don't disagree that bill has been out there and is there, but it's been there for a while. And here's what will happen is JSO has a utility company to pay for their police department. The Gainesville Police Department has Gainesville Regional Utilities that they use to pay for their police department. So we will never be able to support a law enforcement agency on the millage rate and taxable income on the housing mark or the housing here in Williston. It just will never happen. There's some counties, luckily, they have such a high volume of density of buildings and houses that millage rate increase of 0.25% covers everything that they need. Or if they don't raise it, which I don't suggesting, they raise the assessed value and they back into it that way. We will never have that. We will never, at least as far as I know, don't think we'll ever have enough millage money to pay for the law enforcement or the fire department in the general fund. And there's a lot of cities out there that are faced that do the exact same thing. That they get the money from utilities.
And also, Mr. Cox, to answer that question that you asked earlier, you cannot work for two law enforcement agencies. Two agencies can't hold your law enforcement certification because of ATMS. So, doing that program that you're speaking of, we wouldn't be able to do that because it's not legal to do that. To have two law enforcement agencies hold your certification.
If I may, to tack on the conversation with Terry and touch on a little bit with Lamar and what we had talked about is we're trying to recover from a difficult 10 years. And we'll just leave it at that. Part of that was we sacrificed infrastructure for 10 years to put money in general fund. Now we're trying to address our infrastructure. That's why we did our master plan. That's why we're putting all this money into engineering services so we can start giving citizens something they can see. Now, they care about police, they care about fire, and they care that they're not running over potholes. So, what you're seeing in this budget that's going to be new is for each utility, we talked about each utility being able to operate on its own. And what you haven't seen in the past is the capital and the maintenance money built in that. So that's even a less than the amount of money going in the general fund. It never included it before. It was just sacrificed to go into the general fund. So this is going to be a tough one to try and find a balance in. And I'm just pulling this all together because we're going to be talking about capital next. And the wants are this big and the revenues are this big. So we have a challenge. So I just wanted to say you're seeing something besides the threat of us losing our electric utility. We're also starting to incorporate some very important services to our citizens, and that's infrastructure. And that's not been seen in a long time. That's all I wanted to say.
Right, and I understand that, and I agree with that. But it's like the fire chief said earlier. Last year, fire and police got, like you said, we got passed over. So, you know, we contributed back as well by taking that lick. You know, and so we can't keep kicking the can down the road.
And that, you're absolutely right. And if you look, we tightened the rest of the departments did an excellent job tightening up their budget.
There's
so
a
that
bunch
you,
of negatives
they
in
want
their
you,
area.
they want you
Yeah.
to get where you need to be. They've never not wanted that.
Oh,
We've
no.
all been championing. We've all wanted to be your champion and
Yeah.
trying to help you do that. I'm just bringing out the fact that we all have to figure this out.
Right, and I can tell you, Ms. Jackie, we are 100% thankful for other departments that have done what they've done. We spoke and talked about it, so we're all looking for what we've always said we wanted to do was work together as a team for the betterment of the city. So it's you know, it's nice to see that this is happening. So thank you.
I got a question about training. How many new officers would you say we hire a year, train, and then lose, and give or take around a 1 year's time span? And then what was that average cost? Basically, is what I'm trying to get at is if we could see some math that shows what we had invested into one new recruit that turned around and left, it might equal out the difference of the salary that we need to
Absolutely.
go to. You know?
There is a cost to training, a cost to outfitting.
I think we've lost 5 at least.
Yeah, at least 5 or
At least
6.
5 that I can think of.
Yeah, to other agencies for.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's my question is what's that cost that we're losing on? So you can take their salary for, say, that many months that they was here, plus the cost in the training, each one of those, we're liable to equal the number we need to get to, you know, without having to come up with it, but, you know, move the money up.
And I can tell you, I actually told the chief this before the meeting started. When you look at this portion of his budget and his request for salary increases, I am 100% okay with it. I think they came in with a fair amount, that I can see their compression is there. And it's the one that says page 2 in the staffing plan with budget requests for the police department. I think they did a great job putting it together. I do see that there's 1 new police officer there and that you have 1 vacancy.
Yes, ma'am, and I can tell you, the vacancy will be Sergeant Brack when he retires. A tagman, I'm
Like a
sorry.
tagman.
But there is a need for another police officer. And by doing that, that will eliminate a lot of our overtime that we have to pay to have people come in and fill shift, because we are still down another person as well. So if we had that third person, they can fill in and we wouldn't be paying that
I
overtime
noticed
cost.
in the other part of the budget, you did lower your overtime amount,
Yes, ma'am.
and I assume that was because you added the officer.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a way that you've got an idea on the number of what it is to train, the actual number to train somebody?
We could probably come up with that number, but you know, they go through training for 12 weeks.
Yeah, 12 weeks.
So,
12 weeks.
They ride, but they don't.
And we went through, you said about 6 last year alone?
Yes,
yes,
yes.
And then they just turn around, get trained, and then they leave and go somewhere else.
they go somewhere else for more pay.
I mean, I'd love to see what that extra expense is that we have in one full year of training somebody, and see what it compares to that salary we need to
Yeah,
get.
and we have to do that, plus incorporate equipment, you know, guns, uniforms, badges, you know, the whole cost.
They give all that back, don't they?
They do, but it's like a bulletproof vest. When you buy your bulletproof vest, that vest is sized to you.
Right.
You know, so when they leave, that vest is really no good to anybody else.
And we work out trades with other agencies. If I get a police officer and he was down there for 2 years and they bought him a new vest,
They'll send him with his vest.
CEOs will work out an exchange.
Yeah.
They'll let him come with his vest because they know they are fitted. So, but you know, I'm a picture of health. And but if I leave, the likelihood you could take my uniform and give it to Jose Perez is pretty nil.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So it may set upstairs for a while, and that's the loss of the uniform.
Till we put some meat on Perez's bones?
No, sir, I don't think it's
We're
gonna be
trying,
that
Mayor.
bad.
We took him to lunch today, so we're trying.
And we could come up with that number if y'all
Yeah,
really need it.
yeah, if you
But
really need it, we
it's
can
gonna
come
be
up.
staggering, because
I think it would be 144 easy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, easy.
So that's what I was curious to know.
Yeah,
If it
easily.
is, I don't see why we don't just save ourselves the money on one end. To me, it's a wash.
Right.
We save ourselves the money on one end and make less headache and bring in people with a little more experience that can stick around.
Right.
Okay, let me just point out, Councilor Bullock, this is an open-end thing. We can't guarantee just because we pay someone more,
No.
they may leave because someone else can pay them even more. So we can do those, and I'm sure we will be more than happy to do it. Just bear in mind, we're
Yeah.
just giving you the numbers as best
Right.
we can.
Well, there's gotta be an average. If we can get that 6 down to
We
3.
can come up with
Right.
the numbers.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just
exactly.
don't want
Yeah.
you to think those are absolute numbers.
Right.
And
Get that 6 down to 3.
if by doing this, we can cut that number down, that's a great savings
Yeah,
to the city.
great for us.
You know, and also, just for y'all to know, we're any new employee that comes in, we're having them sign a 2-year contract. Which, it is what it is, but
Can't enforce it.
I was
it's
gonna say,
something.
how much money do
Yeah.
you take?
Yeah, it's
Is it like a
something.
football coach's scholarship?
It's something that we're just trying to incorporate to try to help keep people
At
here.
least it keeps their mindset that
Exactly.
they promise to be here.
Exactly.
And it does,
Because you expend it
And
there.
some of them fulfill it.
if I've heard Ms. Gorman say once, she said 100 times, is try to make the people want to work here. And sometimes, by having the money and having the people that we have and being able to work with the city, they want to be here. You know, they do. The ones we have recruited most recently, I think will be here for a while, because they're good fits for us.
That's good.
And so,
And I think also what's going to help us also to cut back on a lot of stuff is, if you look in that budget, there's a request to start paying our reserve officers. So I think we'll have more people involved in our reserve program that can step up and fill in and help us out on different events, special events, parades, whatever we may have. So I think that's going to be a great plus to us as well.
And I can tell you that's one of the requests I put in, because we had reserves, and a police officer has to work so many hours a month to keep their certification. And if he comes to our department and he works, and we spend money on them too, because we train them, we give them the uniform, we give them everything, the badge, and we don't pay them. And I had no clue. We used to pay them,
used to pay reserves. When I found out we weren't paying reserves, I just about fell over.
That should at least be a $10 an hour, like.
Yeah. And when, if they're coming on their own to work their 10 hours a month or whatever it is they have to work, that's one thing. But if we call them and put them on a shift and ask them to work because we need them desperately, we should pay them.
Absolutely. I 100% agree, and that's why you see it in my budget.
Thank you so much. I was happy to see it there.
Yes, ma'am.
And it doesn't amount to a lot of money.
No, it doesn't.
So I was really happy to see that as well.
Yes,
You know, that they will feel respected because we are paying them something.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And, you know, that also will help with the dedication.
Absolutely.
To come in when we request for them to come in, because they know they're coming in and they're going to get compensated for it. But Commissioner Bullock, we did a few rough numbers. These are just rough numbers now, so don't hold us to it. But over the last year, with the 6 we've lost, it's about $62,000.
That puts an officer through 12 weeks of training, uniforms, and paying your FTO, the 5% to train them for that training is roughly around $10,000 per officer.
Per person, and 6 officers.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Hidden costs.
Cut that in half and.
we're good. We cut that in half, we're
If we cut it in
golden.
half, that's another employee. That's
We're
right.
golden, yeah.
That's your new
And
employee.
the ideal is to put it to zero.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay?
Each
So-
year, let's try to do it right.
Yeah, you know, and the good thing is, just to say, like I said, we met with CFCC, and I've been moving around the different counties and different cities, talking to different police chiefs and different things of that nature. The Williston Police Department in the city of Williston is starting to be recognized. I can tell you, we have a vacancy, and I think we probably have 6.
Probably 1, 2, 3, 4,
We're going today.
5.
We got one today.
5 that I know of.
We've gotten 5 applications, even though the starting pay is $36,000. We're still able to get 5 because they know and they see what direction we're headed in. So it is exciting to me to see that people are wanting to come to Williston. Now, here's the deal: how long is that going to last at $36,000? Not very long. So.
So talk to me about your capital. So you have
I'm gonna do.
2 things in capital.
Yep, I'm gonna talk about the cars. The cars is not something new. Maybe Mr. Bullock hasn't been exposed to it, but, you know, as we do, we have a plan where we try to rotate 2 vehicles out of the fleet every year. So we have so many take-home cars. What we end up with is a car runs through the police department on an 8-year rotation. On the 9th year, it ends up as a spare, and if Benton's really nice to us, we'll give him a couple cars and some really nice cars, and they use them out at the airport. And then when they're done with them, we bring them back and we sell them, and then the proceeds come back in. So we have to, in order to do that, we have to be able to get 2 new cars a year, right? Well, the average police car fully equipped today, today, and I mean, it's not today, this is probably 30 days ago, was $52,000, right? So basically we have a USDA grant that's out there. It'll pay 75% of what we put it in for a year ago, which was roughly $93,000 for 2 cars fully equipped. And so we're going to end up buying 2 cars, spend about $26,000 to $29,000. I think maybe it's $29,000. But we have to have that money in the budget up front. So we have to spend the money first. But I can tell you with the USDA grants, once they're approved and you get the authorization, you order the car, the minute you pick the car up and the city pays for it, and we prove that, within 2 days, they put the money right back into our account. They're very fast. But we have to have the whole amount in there. So think of it as we're going to get two fully equipped police cars, radios, lights, sirens, the whole 9 yards, cages, everything, for about $15,000 each. Now our goal is to continue that. So we have, this year we put them in, last year we let them out. And we're hoping that, you know, these vehicles will give us maybe the mileage we need, the Tahoes and some of the new cars that we're getting, and basically we can bridge that 1 year gap from last year, which I'm sure we can. So far the Tahoes have been pretty good vehicles. You know, But what we end up with, we don't know, because we're gonna have to wait and see what's out there when we actually get the grant. And I think our last step is a public meeting, and we had the resolution here, so we got one more public meeting to hold, which doesn't involve the council, just involves Latricia and I, and basically then we're done. And we should be able to get the notification of the money that can be released to us. So, that's it on the cars. So think of it as, like I said, 9 years from now, the cars we get today will be going out to Benton at the airport.
That's a long wait,
Yeah.
but we're very happy for them.
Yeah, and there was one other thing that was on our capital, which was our communication radio consoles. Just before we even get started, thank you, Laura. She's been working at trying to find us some type of grant for the radio consoles, but until that time's come, I'll have Brooke talk a little bit about it.
So the radio consoles is a non-funded mandate that has been put in place. What it is the Levy County has decided to go with a P25 compliant radio system, which deals with encryption, and Aaron can help explain any of the technical things that you have questions about. But what it does for us is the county has generously put in to be able to purchase our in-car radios along with our portable radios. They've done that for every municipality in Levy County to allow us to be all on board with being compliant and interoperability. Yes,
police
and the fire, police and fire. I'm sorry, this goes to the communications division, so it goes for both. So what this has done.
It's
Yes,
mandatory.
it's mandatory.
It's federal.
It's federal for us to go to P25 compliance. So what this is with the county going out for bid on the radio systems and paying for, putting it part of their bidding process to pay for our mobiles and portables, that leaves us with having to purchase our dispatch consoles to be able to communicate with our officers and fire department. In the overall scheme, yes, you're looking at $400,000. That is going to be for two dispatch consoles. That's fully installed. That's all the equipment that we need to be able to speak and communicate. That's on this mandate. But we're looking at 18 to 24 months for this to come into the lap of the county.
Okay, so it's in your capital, but it may not be spent this year.
Yes, ma'am, that is true. We're waiting for the county to finish out their bidding. I don't believe that they have finished getting their bids in yet for the county commissioners to review to determine who they're going to go with to be able to implement the new system.
Just so you understand though, if we get the opportunity to get this on a grant, we're gonna go ahead and move forward.
Yes.
Because if we can do it this year, there's no telling how much this same console is gonna be next year.
5 years ago, it was 165. 5 years ago when we quoted.
3 years ago.
Was it 3?
3 years ago, no, 2 years.
No.
No, right before COVID. It was 3 years ago.
3 years ago,
It was
we quoted it, we got a quote
165.
for the dispatch console, and it was $165,000 for what we are looking at doing right now.
And now it's over 400.
Now it's over 4.
Brooke, typically.
And that's for two, right?
Yes, ma'am, that's for our 2 dispatch
I
consoles.
know, I asked the chief earlier if there was room in dispatch for
Yes,
two.
ma'am, there are.
and he
There's
said
2
there was
dispatch
room.
The little
consoles.
room.
It's a little room.
Typically, when you have an unfunded mandate, some of these agencies will come up with grants. So, giving Laura these ideas
Oh,
of what
yes.
agencies they are, is it Department of Justice, is it Emergency?
Yeah,
You'll see-
absolutely. And
Help
that's
her
what-
understand that, we'll keep looking.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am, absolutely, and that's what we're continuously doing, and, you know, Laura and I will sit down and brainstorm on ways to be able to get this to work. Yes, absolutely.
So, and before we move on too much farther from the police and stuff, is, you know, I've done budgets with the city now for the last 2 years and done budgets for 30 years before that. And before, you know, we would sit back here, and I'll give kudos to our brothers over here and sisters, and fight amongst each other and send dirty texts to each other and we'd leave out of here and fight in the hallway and fight outside and fight everywhere else. And this year, has been a blessing.
Yes.
A
I actually
blessing.
heard them encouraging Lamar a minute ago.
Yes,
Telling
yes.
them, oh, say
So,
this,
so
say
when
this.
she said that, I wanted to point out the fact that just that little thing of her and Laura saying how they work together, that's something that's refreshing and new that I have not seen here, and it's been appreciated.
That's wonderful.
And I'm really hoping we get this grant for this new building, because if we do, then we'll put these radio consoles in the cost of getting that new building and save the city a lot of money.
Wouldn't that be nice?
So just to make sure that we're all on the same page, currently, if you come to the police department and take the time to look at our communications center, we are working on 2 mobile radios.
Car radio.
Car radios.
Car radio.
They are mounted to the counter. It is a officer safety issue, I'll honestly tell you this. The interoperability with talking with the county is non-existent because we cannot patch into their radio system.
Wow.
So this gives us the opportunity to be able to communicate with Levy County Sheriff's Office, EMS, fire, other state agencies.
I know all you've seen it on TV. You've seen the big consoles with all the buttons and stuff on, the girls wearing the headsets.
Yeah,
That's in a
I've been
sense
in
of what
dispatch
it
at the
is.
sheriff's office.
And
I've got
that,
people of them.
because they're having to answer the telephones and they're taking calls and they're talking to the police or taking a fire if they got a bad accident, a bad wreck, they're having to handle both agencies and everything. And they're talking on the phone with Levy County EMS trying to get what ambulance is coming or what they're requesting from Lamar to send an extra truck to somewhere else. They're having to do all that at one time, and they're having to juggle it with 2 hands.
On the portable.
And the consoles actually integrates the telephones and the radio systems all in one unit, basically one control console. That's why they call it that. So they have one headset and everything's right in front of them. And if they need to talk to Levy County, it's just a matter of pushing the button and talking to them. If they need to answer a phone call, they push the button and talk to the phone. If they need to patch a phone call out to the fire chief that's on scene because somebody needs to talk to him about something, they just punch the phone call out and it patches over through him. So it gives them the ability to handle the calls in a much more efficient and safe manner.
And I know you're looking for a grant for the whole $400,000. Do we need to put the whole $400,000 in the budget this year?
I would say yes, go ahead and put it in there, and if we get the grant,
It's kind of what if.
Yeah.
We would rather have it in there
Right.
because if something comes along, we need to be able to spend the money.
Yes.
And
Because
I know, but we have to
if they
balance the
move
budget
forward,
to the
I understand.
$400,000. That's the
I
hard part, if I can do $200,000 instead
I
of
understand.
$400,000.
well,
But if you don't.
And again,
know-
it's something that's coming down the line
yes.
that we know is going to be here in the next year and a half, 2 years,
If it goes that far out.
if it makes it that far out before the county implements everything. So,
well, and I'll just tell you, kudos to my dispatchers. They do a tremendous job with what they have and making it work and trying to keep everybody safe. I mean, I don't know how they do it because I couldn't do it. But kudos to them.
I couldn't do it.
Mr. Barber.
The comment that you had about, putting it in the budget and how would you budget for it to balance the budget, that's why if you look on page 75 of the packet Stephen originally sent you,
That's where I am.
he marked it down as a loan. So that allows him to balance the budget, but still have it in there so that Laura or the department can file for the grant funding, but yet it's still in the budget.
Okay. And he's gonna list it as a grant or a loan, not reserves.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you, sir.
See that teamwork?
Yes, sir.
That's teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work.
All right, so any other questions
Good
for
job.
police? On their salaries, their reserve officers, their capital?
Can I say one more thing and then I'll be done?
Of course.
One more thing. And I just want to give a shout out real quick because this saved us money in our budget. And that was the donation of the money for our ballistic shields. And I want to thank you, Ms. Judy, the officers of Wilson Safety. So with her money, we was able to purchase 4 shields. So we really appreciate that, and you just don't know the life-saving tool that you just provided to an officer or even a citizen if we have to use it. So
I
we want-
just hope you never have to.
yeah, we hope so. We hope they expire and never get used.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be my.
Then we'll put them in the bar and hang them up.
Yeah, we'll put them up there and hang them up.
Thank you for that, I had it on my list.
All right.
Because I saw her sitting there as well.
And we're also looking at other budget things that we can use, to cut costs. Like I told you earlier, we had reached out to a couple agencies and was able to get some equipment that we needed. That's less money we have to spend. We'll continue to do that. If it's something that we can use that's workable, we'll continue to reach out for those type things to help keep the cost down to the city and the citizens as far as law enforcement goes.
Okay, Mr. Witt, you have a police question? Okay.
I was curious why the police,
I'm sorry, but then you cover that microphone.
Here, you want the microphone?
I'm sorry.
Have a microphone.
I was curious to know why the police cars don't have laptops built into them, because...
Glad you asked that.
Excellent question.
That is an excellent question. That is an excellent question.
That's his surprise for the night.
And that's my surprise for tonight. As I was talking about reaching out to other agencies and getting equipment from them that we need, I reached out to my good friend Terry Holland at the Bellevue Police Department, and they're currently getting prepared to buy new laptop computers for their cars. There's nothing wrong with the ones they're taking out. So he graciously told me, yes, I will give you the 15 laptops we have for your city to have laptops in their cars.
Kudos.
So, yes. Thank you, Bellevue Police Department. Thank you, Marion County Sheriff Office, because Marion County donated the radar units that we needed for our cars, because we have some that are down. So they donated them, and the chief of Bellevue has generously going to give us those laptop computers. And Aaron's working on a program that will help us get those things up and running, where we may be able to communicate back and forth through the system. So it's just teamwork. Everything's just teamwork, networking, teamwork. And without it, we would be sitting here scratching our heads. So
You're earning your salary.
we're earning it. That's
I
right.
love you.
There you go.
All right, any other questions for police? If not, I think we're going to take a 15-minute break.
Yes, please.
Everybody okay with that? All right, it is 7:45. We're going to be back at 8 o'clock.
And there are refreshments over in the community room for everyone to enjoy.
Refreshments